I'm Emma Larson, the daughter my family called a failure, the one they never saw coming. Picture this, a glittering Seattle waterfront estate, my family's annual reunion dinner, where wealth and status reign supreme. The air's thick with clinking glasses and smug laughter as my father, Richard, holds court, my mother, Claire, perfects her smile, and my siblings, Nathan and Sophie, bask in their golden glow. Me? I'm the outcast, the one who dared to chase a tech dream they mocked as a childish hobby. Computers are for basement dwellers, my father once sneered. For years, I swallowed their jabs, their dismissals, their belief that I'd never measure up to the Larson legacy. Tonight, they took it further. As we sat around their mahogany table, my father's voice boomed, announcing they were cutting me off, erasing me from the family fortune because my career wasn't worthy. Nathan smirked, Sophie rolled her eyes, and Claire didn't even look my way. They thought they'd broken me, that I'd beg for their approval. But then my phone buzzed, once, twice, 3 times, an urgent call that would flip their world upside down. My CFO's voice was about to reveal a secret I'd hidden for years, a truth that would leave them speechless. You see, I wasn't just surviving, I was building an empire. And in one moment, their scorn would turn to shock. Want to know how a single call changed everything? Let's rewind to where it all began. Let's step back to where it all started, to a world where expectations were heavier than the Seattle rain. I'm Emma Larson, and growing up in my family's gilded cage taught me early on that love came with a price tag, status, prestige, and a last name that opened doors. Our waterfront mansion in Seattle's elite enclave was a stage, and my parents, Richard and Claire Larson, were the directors. My father, a Wall Street titan with a handshake firmer than his heart, ruled our world like he ruled his investment firm. Success, to him, was measured in dollars, connections, and the right kind of legacy. My mother, Claire, was his perfect counterpart, a former debutante who traded ambition for charity galas and a social calendar tighter than her smile. To her, appearances were everything, and she curated our family's image with the precision of a museum curator. Then there were my siblings, the stars of the Larson show. Nathan, 4 years older, was the golden son, molded in my father's image. By 30, he was a vice president at Dad's firm, his Stanford MBA framed in Richard's office like a trophy. His suits were tailored, his fiancée was appropriate, and his every move screamed privilege. Sophie, 2 years younger than me, was the family's princess, with mom's charm and dad's cunning. Her law school achievements at Yale were celebrated with catered dinners and society page write-ups. Her blonde curls and practiced modesty made her the darling of Seattle's elite, destined for a life of political luncheons and power couples. And me? I was Emma, the middle child, the odd piece in their perfect puzzle. From the moment I could hold a screwdriver, I was different. While Nathan counted his allowance and Sophie played dress-up, I was in my room, tearing apart laptops and piecing them back together. By 12, I taught myself to code, my fingers dancing across keyboards while online tutorials lit up my screen. Those late nights were my sanctuary, a world where I could build something real. But to my parents, it was a phase, a quirk unfit for a Larson. Computers are for boys who can't throw a football, my father barked one night, catching me coding at 2 a.m. No daughter of mine will waste her life on that. My mother's concerns were less blunt but just as cutting. Emma, darling, those screens will ruin your eyes, she'd say, her voice dripping with pity. How will you find a suitable husband hunched over a keyboard? School didn't bridge the gap. I attended a top-tier STEM academy in Seattle, where I thrived in math, physics, and computer science. My robotics team took nationals when I was 16, a victory that should have been mine to celebrate. But my parents were in Napa that weekend, sipping wine at Sophie's debate tournament. Nathan needed a ride to a crew regatta, so they missed my presentation, my trophy, my moment. I stood on that stage, clutching a gold plaque, scanning the crowd for faces that never showed. My perfect SAT math score? It earned a distracted "that's nice, dear" from Claire over breakfast, while Nathan's B+ in economics warranted a new watch. The message was clear, my achievements didn't count unless they fit the Larson mold. It wasn't just neglect, it was dismissal. I overheard Claire once, her voice low at a cocktail party, telling a friend, "Emma's our charity case, such a shame." Those words burned, searing themselves into my heart. They fueled a quiet fire, a resolve to prove I was more than their pity project. My high school years were a balancing act, excelling in classes, leading the coding club, and dodging my family's judgment. When college applications came around, my parents had my future scripted: Wharton for business, then a consulting job, followed by a suitable marriage. I had other plans. I applied to Caltech, the mecca for engineers, and got in with a partial scholarship. When I told them, my father laughed, a cold, hollow sound. "Engineering? That's for the help, not for Larson's." Claire's face twisted in horror. "All your friends are going to Princeton, Emma. Who will you meet at Caltech?" Their disapproval was a weight, but I carried it. Caltech was my rebellion, my declaration of independence. My parents could have paid my tuition in a heartbeat, but Richard called it learning responsibility. So I worked, tutoring, waitressing, coding freelance gigs, while maintaining a 4.0 GPA. My graduation was a milestone I earned alone. Nathan and Sophie were at a family wedding in the Hamptons, and my parents joined them, citing prior commitments. The only family there was my high school teacher, Ms. Karen Hayes, who'd become my mentor. She saw the spark my parents ignored, slipping me coding books and encouraging my wildest ideas. "You're not just smart, Emma," she'd say. "You're unstoppable." Her belief was a lifeline, a reminder that I didn't need the Larson name to shine. College was where I found my tribe, classmates who spoke my language, who stayed up late debugging code and dreaming of startups. But family gatherings were a different story. Back in Seattle for holidays, I faced the same old script. "Emma's still tinkering with computers," Claire would say to her friends, as if I were knitting scarves instead of studying neural networks. Nathan would smirk, "All that education for a cubicle job?" Sophie was the worst, her compliments laced with venom. "It's so brave how you don't care about status, Emma." I could never be that, carefree. Their words stung, but I listened, I learned, and I planned. The world was changing, and I was going to change with it. Those years of being the odd one out weren't just pain, they were preparation. Every dismissal, every missed milestone, every backhanded remark was a brick in the foundation of who I'd become. I wasn't just the Larson family's disappointment, I was a dreamer with a vision they couldn't see. While they were busy scripting my failure, I was writing my own story, one line of code at a time. And soon, that story would lead me to a discovery that would change everything, not just for me, but for millions of lives. While my family planned my life, scripting a future of business schools and suitable marriages, I was carving a different path, one they'd never understand. I'm Emma Larson, and after Caltech, I didn't chase the corner offices or society pages my parents dreamed of. I dove into the gritty, exhilarating world of Seattle's tech scene, where ideas could change lives and failure was just a lesson. My first job was at a small healthcare startup, pulling in a modest $65,000 a year, a number my family mocked at every holiday dinner. All that education for a secretary's salary, my father would quip, while Nathan smirked and Sophie offered backhanded praise. "It's so brave how you don't care about money, Emma." Their words stung, but I wasn't there to impress them. I was there to learn, to observe, to find the gaps in a system begging for disruption. The startup world was my classroom, teaching me truths my family's polished boardrooms never could. Failure wasn't the end, it was data. Hierarchies could be toppled with the right idea. Money was just one currency, impact was the real wealth. While my siblings chased promotions and prestige, I was soaking it all in, my mind buzzing with possibilities. Then, 2 years ago, in the dim glow of my tiny Capitol Hill apartment, I saw it, a problem so glaring it kept me up at night. Patients with chronic illnesses were waiting months for specialist appointments, their conditions worsening while doctors' schedules sat inefficiently booked. The healthcare system was stuck in the 90s, and people were suffering for it. The idea for CareConnect hit me at 3 a.m., my laptop screen the only light in the room. A HIPAA-compliant platform that used AI to match patients with specialists based on symptoms, urgency, and availability. It would offer secure video consultations, medical record sharing, and prescription management, all in one seamless system. It wasn't just software, it was a lifeline. I poured every penny I'd saved, $50,000, scraped together from freelance gigs and skipped vacations, into building a prototype. For 6 months, I juggled my day job and CareConnect by night, surviving on coffee, determination, and a stubborn belief that this could work. My apartment became a war room, code sprawled across my screen, takeout boxes piling up, my eyes burning from sleepless nights. The first hurdle was funding. I pitched to investors, my heart pounding as I stood before rooms of skeptical faces. The men, and they were mostly men, listened politely, then asked the same tired question: do you have a technical co-founder? Translation: where's the guy who actually knows tech? One investor, a gray-haired suit with a condescending smile, leaned back and said, "Healthcare's complicated, sweetheart. You need a male CEO to sell this." I walked out, my fists clenched, his words fueling my fire. Another suggested I step down to CTO and find a seasoned leader. "You're bright," he said, "but investors want confidence." I wanted to scream that I'd coded the platform myself, that I'd studied the industry for years, but I smiled, thanked him, and kept going. 37 pitches, 37 rejections, until I met Laura Bennett, a former healthcare executive turned angel investor. She didn't ask for a male co-founder. She asked about my vision, my data, my plan. 2 weeks later, she handed me a check for $200,000. "This isn't just software," she said. "This is going to save lives." With that seed funding, I quit my job and hired a tiny team. A back-end developer, a UI/UX designer, and Megan Carter, who started as an administrative assistant but quickly became my right-hand woman. Megan, with her healthcare admin background and a work ethic that matched mine, got it from day one. During her interview, she leaned forward, eyes bright. "This isn't just an app, Emma. This is going to change how people heal." Within months, she was running operations like a seasoned COO, even if we couldn't afford fancy titles. Our first office was a converted storage room in a Seattle co-working space, the kind of place where the Wi-Fi flickered and the walls were paper thin. We worked 7 days a week, often past midnight, our laughter echoing through the exhaustion. When the air conditioning broke during a July heat wave, Megan and I coded in tank tops, pressing bags of frozen peas to our necks to stay cool. When we couldn't afford desks, we used cardboard boxes, our laptops wobbling but our spirits steady. Those were the days that forged us, that turned Megan from a colleague into a sister. The breakthrough came 9 months in, when a major Seattle hospital agreed to pilot CareConnect in their cardiology department. The results were staggering. Patient satisfaction soared by 42%, wait times dropped by 68%, and specialist utilization improved by a third. We had hard data now, numbers that spoke louder than any pitch deck. More hospitals signed on, revenue started flowing, and we moved to a real office in Pioneer Square, with actual furniture and a view of the waterfront. Our team grew to 15, a mix of coders, designers, and healthcare experts who believed in the mission as fiercely as I did. Series of funding brought in $4.5 million, letting us scale nationally. A year later, Series B landed $28 million at a $65 million valuation. CareConnect was no longer a dream, it was a force. Through it all, I kept my family in the dark. Not out of spite, but survival. Their dismissal had cut too deep, their mockery too sharp. I couldn't bear the thought of them belittling this thing I'd poured my soul into. So I lied, told them I was still at the old startup, maybe with a small raise. I invented a fictional one-bedroom apartment when they asked where I lived, though I'd bought a loft in South Boston with exposed brick and harbor views. I drove my old Toyota to family dinners, leaving my Tesla in the garage. It wasn't just about hiding, it was about proving something to myself. I could do this without their money, their connections, their approval. Every milestone, the first hospital contract, the first million in revenue, was mine, earned in the shadows of their doubt. But the shadows couldn't hold forever. Care Connect was growing too fast, the stakes too high. In the weeks before that fateful family reunion, we were prepping for our initial public offering, with Goldman Sachs, ironically, my father's firm, leading the charge. Early talks pegged our valuation at $100 million. We'd expanded to 112 employees across 3 offices, with contracts at over 2,000 hospitals nationwide. The Wall Street Journal named me one of 30 under 30 in healthcare, though I kept the article from my family's eyes. The night before the dinner, Megan and I were on calls with global investors until 2 a.m. hammering out a deal with a Japanese firm that could push our valuation even higher. As I chose my modest outfit for the reunion, a simple dress to avoid their envy, I wondered if tonight might be the night to reveal my truth. I had no idea the universe had other plans that would ignite a firestorm at the Larson family table. Fast forward to the night everything came crashing down, the night my family thought they could rewrite my story. I pulled into the driveway of the Larson family estate, a sprawling Seattle mansion that screamed wealth with its sleek columns and manicured hedges. My beat-up Toyota, a deliberate choice to hide the Tesla parked in my garage, looked out of place next to Nathan's Porsche and Sophie's Range Rover. I smoothed my modest black dress, not the designer one I could afford, but a simple one from a department store rack. I'd learned long ago to dim my light for these dinners, to avoid their scrutiny. My phone was on vibrate, a rule I'd set with Megan, my CFO, only call if it's urgent. Taking a deep breath, I steeled myself for the annual ritual of being the family's disappointment. The heavy oak door swung open before I could knock, and there was Ellen, our housekeeper of 2 decades, her warm smile a rare comfort. "Miss Emma, you're here," she said, her voice a lifeline in the storm I knew was coming. I handed her a bottle of cheap Cabernet, nothing like the vintage bottles in my own cellar, because blending in was my armor. "Is everyone already here?" I asked. She nodded. "In the dining room, having drinks. Nathan's sharing news about his promotion." Of course he was. I forced a smile, squared my shoulders, and walked toward the clink of crystal and the hum of self-congratulation. The dining room was my mother's pride, a cathedral of opulence with a mahogany table under a chandelier that cost more than my first car. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the Puget Sound, and ancestral portraits glared from the walls, as if judging me alongside my family. Richard stood by the fireplace, scotch in hand, commanding attention. Claire arranged appetizers with surgical precision, her navy dress fresh from a boutique. Nathan gestured grandly, mid-story, while Sophie nodded with rehearsed interest. The only surprise was Aunt Lillian, my father's eccentric sister, whose colorful scarf and warm eyes stood out in this sea of pretense. She rarely came to these gatherings, her literature professor life too bohemian for the Larsons. "Emma, you made it," Claire announced, her tone implying I was late despite being right on time. Her blonde bob was flawless, her smile a performance. "Hello, Mother," I said, enduring her air kiss. Traffic from downtown was brutal. She waved a hand. "You really should move closer, dear. There are charming condos in Bellevue." Before I could respond, Richard's voice cut through. "There's our tech whiz," he said, raising his glass with a smirk that didn't reach his eyes. His jovial tone masked the condescension I'd known my whole life. "Hi, Dad," I said, kissing his cheek. "Still at that little startup?" he asked, knowing full well he didn't care about the answer. "Something like that," I replied, keeping it vague. Nathan swooped in next, his cologne as overpowering as his ego. At 32, he was my father's mirror, Rolex, slick haircut, handshake too tight. "Baby sister," he said, sipping a martini. "Just telling everyone about my new division. 14 direct reports, corner office, Harbor View. But I'm sure your button clicking is fulfilling too." His smirk was a blade, and I felt it twist. Sophie completed the gauntlet, her pink dress and pearls straight from a catalog. "Emma, you look comfortable," she said, eyeing my dress with a pitying smile. "Very fitting for your situation." Only Aunt Lillian offered real warmth, crossing the room to hug me. "Ignore them," she whispered. "You're stronger than they know." I squeezed her hand, grateful for my one ally. The pre-dinner ritual unfolded like a tired script. Claire handed out drinks, white wine for the women, scotch for the men, as if we were stuck in a 1950s ad. Richard grilled Nathan about market trends, while Sophie dominated with wedding plans, lamenting that the mayor could only attend her reception, not the ceremony. I sipped my wine, nodding on cue, my mind drifting to the senators I'd dined with last month to discuss healthcare policy. They'd valued my ideas, unlike the people in this room. But here, I was still the odd one out, the one whose work didn't matter because it wasn't their kind of success. Dinner was announced, a welcome escape from the small talk. We filed into the dining room, taking our assigned seats like actors in a play. Richard and Claire bookend the table, Nathan and Sophie on one side, me and Lillian on the other. The empty chair beside me, once my grandfather's, felt like a metaphor for my place here. Ellen's prepared something special, Claire said as lobster bisque arrived, each bowl probably worth a week's groceries for most. We're celebrating our family's achievements. She raised her glass to Nathan's promotion, Sophie's engagement, and then faltered, searching for something to say about me. To togetherness, she settled on, her voice hollow. The Larson tradition of updates began, a thinly veiled competition where every word was weighed. Nathan went first, detailing his promotion, the bonus structure, the merger he'd spearheaded. Claire's questions were designed to amplify his glory. "And how many candidates did they pass over for you, darling?" she asked, beaming. Sophie followed, weaving her wedding plans into her Yale law achievements, dropping that her fiancé's mentor saw him as a future senator. "He's only 35, she added, her modesty as rehearsed as her smile. Then it was my turn. Richard leaned back, his expression expectant but cold. "And you, Emma? Anything new with that computer job?" My chest tightened, the familiar mix of dread and defiance rising. I'd spent years hiding my success, protecting it from their dismissal, but tonight, I felt a flicker of courage. "Actually," I began, my voice steady, "the healthcare app I've been working on is doing well. We've expanded to several hospitals." Claire cut me off, her smile tight. "That's nice, dear. Nathan, tell us about the summer house you're eyeing in the San Juans." Just like that, I was erased again. Nathan launched into a monologue about waterfront properties, and I stared at my plate, pushing bisque around, wondering why their rejection still stung. The humiliation didn't stop there. As Ellen cleared the appetizers, Claire reached under her chair and handed me a book, her smile saccharine. "For you, Emma," she said loudly, ensuring every eye was on me. It was a career planning guide, the kind you'd give a lost teenager. "I thought it might help you find direction." The table went quiet, Nathan stifling a laugh, Sophie's lips twitching. My face burned, but I took the book, my hand steady. "Thank you, Mother," I said, my voice calm despite the storm inside. Nathan piled on, leaning forward. "That dress, Emma," he said, gesturing at my outfit. "It's so thrifty. Perfect for your startup hustle, I guess." He didn't know it was designer, chosen to avoid their envy. Lillian caught my eye, her small nod urging me to hold on. My father cleared his throat, the signal for a serious announcement. The room stilled, even Sophie pausing her chatter. "Your mother and I have been revisiting the family's financial plans," he said, swirling his scotch. "With Nathan's career soaring and Sophie's wedding on the horizon, it's time to realign our legacy." Claire nodded, her face a mask of rehearsed solemnity. My stomach nodded, sensing what was coming. "Nathan will take over the family trust next year," Richard continued, pride in his voice. "And after Sophie's wedding, we're gifting her and her fiancé the Napa Valley estate to start their life properly." Then he turned to me, his eyes clinical, devoid of warmth. "Which brings us to you, Emma." Lillian's hand found mine under the table, a quiet anchor. "We've supported your choices for years," he said, as if my Caltech degree and career were a hobby. "But we've decided it's time for a change." Claire set down her glass with deliberate care. "We're cutting you off, Emma," she said, her tone as casual as if she were discussing the weather. Effective immediately. The words landed like a slap, sharp and public. The allowance, any inheritance, access to the family properties, all of it, Richard added. Until you make choices that honor the Larson name. I swallowed, finding my voice. Choices like abandoning my career for something you approve of? I asked, steady but sharp. Sophie rolled her eyes. Don't be dramatic, Emma. They just want you to stop wasting your life on that tech nonsense. Nathan nodded. The Larson name has a reputation. Your choices drag us all down. I looked around, their faces a gallery of judgment, Richard's stern frown, Claire's feigned concern, Sophie's smug satisfaction, Nathan's patronizing pity. Only Lillian looked pained, her grip on my hand tightening. They thought they'd won, that they'd finally broken me. But they didn't know the empire I'd built in the shadows, the lives I was changing, the truth waiting to explode. As their words echoed, my phone began to buzz, a signal that would shatter their world. The air in the Larson dining room was thick with their judgment, their words still ringing in my ears. My father's cold declaration to cut me off, my mother's casual dismissal, Nathan's smug superiority, Sophie's venomous smirk. They thought they'd won, that they'd finally erased me from the family legacy. I sat there, my heart pounding, the weight of years of rejection pressing down. But something inside me refused to break. I'd built something they couldn't imagine, and the truth was about to crash their carefully curated world. As their voices droned on, my phone began to buzz in my purse, once, twice, then a third time. It was Megan's emergency signal, the one we'd agreed meant something massive. I tried to ignore it, to focus on the sting of their words, but the buzzing wouldn't stop. For calls now, insistent, urgent. Aunt Lillian leaned close, her voice a whisper. Answer it, Emma. It sounds important. My father sighed, his sarcasm cutting. Of course, the little startup crisis can't wait for family dinner. I hesitated, then reached for my purse, my fingers trembling as I saw Megan's name flashing on the screen. Excuse me, I said, standing and stepping back from the table, still in the dining room. I answered, my voice low. Megan, what's happening? What came next was a moment I'd replay in my mind for months, a moment that turned their scorn to silence. Megan's voice burst through, clear enough for everyone to hear. Emma, I've been trying to reach you. SoftBank just confirmed they're in for $40 million. CareConnect's valuation is official, $100 million pre-IPO. The dining room froze. My father's Scotch glass stopped mid-swirl. My mother's wine hovered halfway to her lips. Nathan's jaw dropped, and Sophie's smug smile vanished like smoke. Megan kept going, oblivious to the drama unfolding. The Goldman Sachs team is popping champagne. Oh, and Forbes called, they're featuring you in their Billionaires in the Making series. The Hospital Association wants you as their keynote speaker. The CEO called personally. I stood there, watching my family's faces transform from dismissal to disbelief. My father's stern frown melted into bewilderment. Claire's practiced poise cracked, her eyes wide. Nathan looked like he'd been punched, and Sophie's mouth hung open, her pearls suddenly less impressive. I managed a calm reply, though my heart raced. That's incredible news, Megan. Can you run through the details? As Megan outlined the investment terms, stock options, and media plans, I let the truth sink in for my family. They'd mocked my tech hobby, called my career a waste, and now they were staring at the reality. I wasn't just surviving, I was soaring. I ended the call and sat back down, the silence deafening. Aunt Lillian broke it with a laugh, raising her glass. Well, I believe congratulations are in order. Her delight was a spark in the stunned room. My family sat frozen, 5 faces grappling with a truth they couldn't dismiss. Claire recovered first, her socialite instincts kicking in. Emma, darling, she said, her voice dripping with a warmth I'd never heard. What wonderful news. Why didn't you tell us about your business success? Her sudden affection was as transparent as glass, and it stung more than her indifference. My father's face shifted from shock to calculation, the investment banker in him taking over. 100 million, he repeated, as if testing the number. For your healthcare app? CareConnect, I supplied, the name they'd never bothered to learn. Yes, we're preparing for our IPO with Goldman Sachs. I couldn't resist a jab. Your firm, Dad. Nathan choked on his wine. You're working with Goldman? Which team? David Rosenthal's group? I nodded, naming one of their top partners, a contemporary of my father's. David's been incredibly supportive. He's handling our IPO personally. Richard's patronizing tone vanished, replaced by something almost like respect. David hasn't led a healthcare offering in years, he said, his voice quieter. He made an exception, I replied simply. He believes in what we're building. Sophie, never one to stay silent, jumped in with forced enthusiasm. This is amazing, Emma. I always knew you were smart with all that computer stuff. Her lie was laughable, and Lillian didn't let it slide. That's news to everyone, dear, she quipped, sipping her wine. Sophie's face reddened, but she pressed on. We should celebrate. This is huge for the family. The hypocrisy was breathtaking. An hour ago, they'd called my work a gimmick, a failure unfit for the Larson name. Now, they wanted to claim my victory as their own. My phone buzzed again, a text from Megan. Wall Street Journal wants an exclusive on the SoftBank deal. Deadline in 3 hours. Also, your photo shoot is set for Tuesday. I glanced up to see Claire studying me, her eyes catching the glint of my watch. Is that Cartier? She asked, noticing it for the first time. Last year's model, I confirmed, letting her reassess me. And your dress, she continued, squinting at the black fabric she'd dismissed. That's not from a department store, is it? Celine, I admitted. I dress down for family dinners. The implication hung in the air. I'd been hiding my success, my wealth, my power. Not out of shame, but to protect it from their judgment. Richard cleared his throat, switching to businessman mode. Emma, clearly there's been a misunderstanding about your professional situation. Perhaps we should revisit our earlier discussion about the family finances. I raised an eyebrow. About cutting me off? He winced at my bluntness. About the family arrangements. Circumstances have changed. Have they? I asked, my voice steady. I'm the same person with the same career you called unworthy 15 minutes ago. Claire interjected, her tone soothing but desperate. Don't be difficult, dear. Your father's trying to fix a simple mix-up. I shook my head. It's not a mix-up. You made your stance clear, my choices don't fit the Larson legacy. Nathan tried damage control, his strategist brain kicking in. We were concerned, Emma. You seem to be struggling. You never mentioned this success. Lillian murmured into her glass, I wonder why. Her dry wit cut through their excuses, and I felt a surge of gratitude for her. Sophie, ever focused on the bottom line, blurted out, how much are you worth? I met her gaze, unflinching. CareConnect is valued at 100 million pre-IPO. I own 51%. The math silenced them again. Over 50 million, Richard said slowly, his voice careful. On paper, for now, I confirmed. The IPO will likely double that. And we're expanding internationally next quarter. Claire reached for my hand, a gesture so foreign it startled me. Sweetheart, this is wonderful. We need to celebrate properly. I'll call the club tomorrow for a special dinner. I pulled my hand back. That won't be necessary. She blinked, confused. Nonsense, this is a major achievement for the family. I tilted my head. For the family? An hour ago, I wasn't Larson enough for your resources. Now my success belongs to you? Richard shifted, uncomfortable. Emma, perhaps we were hasty. Family decisions need full information. You had the information you cared about, I said. You knew I was in healthcare tech. You knew I'd founded a company. You just decided it wasn't worth your attention. Sophie tried a new tactic, her voice bright. This is so exciting, Emma. With your tech skills and my fiancé's political connections, we could do amazing things. He's looking for healthcare platforms to champion. Her audacity was stunning, but predictable. Nathan jumped in, eyes gleaming. And Dad, imagine the family fund getting in pre-IPO. I could call David tomorrow. I held up a hand. Stop. Just stop. They froze, surprised by my firmness. I'm not looking for family investment. CareConnect has all the funding it needs. Richard frowned. Surely a family position would be beneficial. No, I said, cutting him off. Our cap table is set. Nathan tried again. What about a board seat? A Larson presence would add credibility. I almost laughed. Our board is complete, with people who believed in us from day one. Claire looked baffled. Darling, now that we understand, we want to support you properly. I met her gaze. Now that you know I'm rich. That's not support. Lillian coughed, hiding a smile, and I felt a flicker of triumph. The truth was out, and it was mine to wield. But this moment wasn't just about their shock, it was about what came next, about how I'd choose to move forward. The dining room was still reeling from Megan's call, my family's faces a mix of shock and calculation. They'd just learned CareConnect was worth $100 million, that I, Emma Larson, the daughter they'd dismissed, was at its helm. Their sudden interest was palpable, Claire's forced warmth, Richard's investment talk, Nathan's board seat pitch, Sophie's transparent grab for political leverage. They thought they could rewrite history, claim my success as their own now that it glittered with dollar signs. But I wasn't the same Emma who'd sat through years of their jabs, hoping for approval. I'd built an empire without them, and I wasn't about to let them stake a claim. I looked at my father, his businessman mask firmly in place. I'm not looking for family investment, I said, my voice clear and firm. CareConnect has all the funding it needs. Richard blinked, unaccustomed to being refused. Surely a pre-IPO family position would be strategic, he pressed, as if I hadn't spoken. No, I cut in. Our cap table is set. Nathan tried next, leaning forward with that smug confidence I'd always hated. A Larson on the board would add credibility, Emma. Think about it. I met his gaze, unflinching. Our board is complete, with people who believed in us when no one else did. Sophie chimed in, her voice syrupy. Emma, we're family. We want to support you now that we know. I tilted my head. Now that you know I'm rich. That's not support. Aunt Lillian coughed, hiding a smile, her eyes twinkling with pride. Claire looked genuinely confused, her socialite instincts failing her. Darling, we're trying to help you succeed, she insisted. I shook my head. You made it clear my success doesn't count unless it fits your mold. I don't need your help now. The room fell silent, their opportunism exposed. I stood, picking up my purse. I'm leaving. I have an early meeting tomorrow. Claire's voice rose, alarmed. Leaving? But we haven't had dessert. We need to discuss your media strategy, your wealth management. I almost laughed. I have advisors, a PR team, and lawyers. I'm covered. Richard stood too, his tone serious. Emma, family is more important than disagreements. Don't be hasty. I paused, meeting his eyes. I agree. That's why I'm taking time to decide what kind of relationship I want with this family. I turned to Lillian, who was already gathering her things. Need a ride? She grinned. I'd love one. As we walked out, Sophie called after me, desperate to salvage her agenda. Emma, we're hosting a dinner for my fiancé's campaign next week. You could talk healthcare innovation. I paused at the door, glancing back at the opulent room, the family who'd only seen me when I became valuable. I'll check my schedule, I said coolly. But my speaking fee for political events starts at $50,000. Lillian chuckled, and we stepped into the cool Seattle night, leaving the Larson legacy to choke on its own arrogance. The drive to Lillian's apartment was quiet at first, the weight of the evening settling between us. She broke the silence with a soft laugh. $50,000 for a speaking fee? Your mother nearly swallowed her pearls. I smiled, the tension easing. I don't actually charge, but for Sophie's fiancé? I'd make an exception. Lillian winked. Double it for that self-important boy. We pulled up to her brownstone, and I turned to her. You knew about Care Connect, didn't you? She nodded. I read the tech section, Emma. Saw your company profiled months ago. I was waiting for you to share when you were ready. I sighed. I should have told you. I just got used to keeping it separate. She patted my hand. For good reason. Your family measures success by their rules. You broke free of that. I didn't until my 40s. You've done it in your 20s. Her words stayed with me as I drove to my South Boston loft, a sleek space with harbor views I'd earned on my own. My phone lit up with notifications, texts from Richard about investment strategies, an email from Claire inviting me to a gala, Nathan wanting coffee to talk tech, Sophie pushing her fiancé's campaign. I set the phone aside, unopened, and called Megan instead. I'm so sorry, she said immediately. I didn't know you were at a family dinner. I laughed. Don't apologize. Your timing was perfect. She sounded relieved. So, they took it well? I smirked. They took it like vultures spotting gold. Suddenly, my hobby is fascinating. Megan groaned. Ouch. What now? I leaned against my window, gazing at the Seattle skyline. We focus on what matters. The IPO, the hospitals, the lives we're changing. Family drama can wait. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind. CareConnect's IPO soared beyond expectations, hitting a valuation of $220 million on day one. My net worth crossed $112 million, more than my family's combined wealth. The headlines screamed my name: Forbes, CNBC, The Wall Street Journal, all wanting the story of the healthcare tech prodigy. I kept my focus on the work, not the spotlight, avoiding questions about family influence. But the world noticed. At a Seattle charity gala, Claire tried to claim credit, smiling for cameras as she called me our brilliant daughter. I stepped to the microphone, my voice steady. CareConnect was built without family connections, I said, pausing as the crowd leaned in. It was built on belief in a better way to care. The applause was deafening, and Claire's smile faltered, her mask slipping for all to see. I set clear boundaries with my family. Claire's calls went to voicemail, Richard's lunch invites got polite declines, and Sophie's campaign pitches were ignored. I attended Sophie's wedding for an hour, slipping out after the ceremony, dodging their attempts to parade me for clout. The only family tie I nurtured was with Lillian, who visited my office for a tour. This is extraordinary, she said, watching our engineers demo the platform. You built something that helps people. I nodded. That's always been the goal. The money's nice, but it's not the point. She smiled. That's why you've succeeded where others haven't. You solved a real problem, not chased a paycheck. My proudest moment came not from headlines, but from a quiet encounter. At a coding bootcamp I sponsored, a young woman approached me, her eyes bright with ambition. My parents say tech isn't for girls like me, she said. How do I keep going? I saw myself in her, the girl who'd coded through doubt and dismissal. You define your own success, I told her. Not your parents, not anyone. Build something that matters to you, and find people who see your vision. Her nod was small, but it carried a spark I recognized, a spark I'd carried through every Larson dinner, every cutting remark. CareConnect grew, reaching 450 hospitals, connecting 30,000 patients daily with specialists. Wait times for critical care dropped from weeks to hours, lives saved because of what we'd built. I founded the Larson Impact Fund, a $20 million initiative to support women in tech, especially those in healthcare. The name was deliberate, a reclaiming of the Larson legacy on my terms. As I stood on my loft's balcony, watching Seattle's lights, I knew the real victory wasn't the money or the headlines. It was the freedom to choose my path, to build a life that mattered. And that journey was just beginning. Looking back on that night at the Larson family reunion, I see it now as a turning point, not because of the money or the headlines, but because it forced me to claim my truth. I'm Emma Larson, and my family's rejection, their cold decision to cut me off, wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning of something far greater. For years, I'd carried their judgment like a weight, hoping one day they'd see me, really see me, for who I was. But that dinner, with its stinging words and smug dismissals, taught me a lesson more valuable than their approval. My worth isn't tied to their validation. It's tied to the life I choose to build, the problems I choose to solve, and the people I choose to lift up along the way. Growing up, I thought success meant fitting into the Larson mold, prestigious degrees, corner offices, society pages. My father measured it in dollars, my mother in appearances, my siblings in connections. But I found a different metric, one that lit a fire in my soul. At CareConnect, we're not just a company, we're a lifeline. Today, 450 hospitals use our platform, connecting 30,000 patients every day to specialists who can help them. We've slashed wait times for critical care from weeks to hours, sometimes minutes. Behind those numbers are real people, mothers, fathers, children, who get answers faster, who get hope sooner. Every time I hear from a patient whose life we've touched, I'm reminded why I kept going, why I coded through the doubt, why I bet everything on a dream my family called a hobby. That dream wasn't just about proving them wrong. It was about proving myself right. When I founded the Larson Impact Fund, pouring $20 million into supporting women in tech, I wasn't just giving back, I was rewriting what the Larson name could mean. The fund's scholarships send girls from underserved communities to coding camps, pairing them with mentors who see their potential. I named it Larson not for my family, but for me, for the legacy I'm building, one that values purpose over prestige. Every time I meet a young coder with stars in her eyes, I see the girl I was, the one who needed someone to say, "Your dreams are enough." Now, I get to be that voice, and there's no valuation that can match that feeling. My family's still out there, sending invitations to galas, pitching investment deals, trying to claim a piece of what I built. I keep them at arm's length, attending the occasional holiday with clear boundaries, choosing moments like the Children's Hospital benefit where CareConnect's donations make a difference. They haven't changed, not really. Their world still revolves around status and wealth. But I've changed. I don't need their applause to know my path is true. I found my people, the CareConnect team who believed when no one else did, Aunt Lillian who saw my heart, the young women I mentor who remind me why I started. They're my chosen family, bound by purpose, not obligation. Here's what I've learned, and I hope you carry it with you: success isn't what others say it is. It's not a bank account, a title, or a last name. It's the impact you make, the lives you touch, the truth you hold when the world doubts you. My family's rejection was painful, but it was also a gift. It forced me to stand alone, to build something so undeniably mine that no one could take it away. You don't need everyone to believe in you, just the right ones, and most importantly, yourself. So here's a challenge: write down one goal that's yours, not your parents', not society's, but yours. Take one step toward it this week, no matter how small. Maybe it's signing up for a coding class, starting a side hustle, or just saying no to a path that doesn't feel right. That step is your power, your proof that you get to define what success means. I think about the patients who've thanked us, their voices shaky with gratitude. A mother who got a diagnosis in time to save her son. A grandfather who saw his grandkids again because we connected him to care. Those stories are my why, the heartbeat of CareConnect. They remind me that the work matters, that it's bigger than any family drama or dollar sign. If you've ever been doubted, dismissed, or told your dreams don't fit, know this: you're not alone. Your path is yours to carve, and it's never too late to start. Share your story in the comments below. What's one dream you're chasing, one step you're taking? Your words might inspire someone else to take their first step, too. This journey taught me to surround myself with believers, not doubters. The ones who cheer before you're successful, not after. The ones who see your vision when it's just a spark. If my story resonates, hit that like button, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Let's build a community of dreamers who define success on their own terms. As I stand on my rooftop, the Seattle skyline stretching before me, I know the real victory isn't in proving others wrong, it's in living a life that's authentically mine. Your turn's next. What's your story going to be?